Alright, so here's the deal. To avoid getting copyright strikes in future videos, we're going to be making our own music right here, right on the set as we're recording. This is just a little session on the show from now on that I like to call Exro Performs. It's a really good way to increase productivity, you know. All that fun shit. God damn, am I the next Paul McCartney or what? Am I right, fellas? Man, sometimes I take myself by surprise. Hey everybody, Exro here, back with the same shit you came for in the first place. Today we're going to be continuing on this trend of looking into the Rant community by gazing onwards onto the next creator that my handy-dandy Wheel of Fortune here chose out for me. Now, if you aren't up to snuff, essentially this is just a mini-series on my channel of me covering the YouTubers within the Rant community that I look up to, respect, and in some cases have even talked to. It's really just me giving my honest thoughts on these channels and how they can improve their content, as well as bringing to light the actual good aspects of their channels to top it all off in a nice little raspberry twist. Last time, I covered one of the most popular YouTubers and polarizing figures within this community, to which he actually responded with a very positive attitude. We shared some friendly dialogue, I think he advertised it in his Discord, and we went about our separate ways. This is all good. But I'm not here to sing the praises of these creators. No, rather, I'm here to search out my next victim to tear apart like a fucking wild animal. And Mark, the wheel landed on you, buddy. You better pray to God now, because he's all you'll have left after I'm through with you, big boy. Nah, I'm just fucking. Let's get on with this goddamn video already. Mark is an interesting figure within the community, mostly because his rise to fame was a very abrupt one, with his videos The Velsky Bum 94 rant and his Why I Dislike Hartman video, which is notable because it came before the Oax's controversy, acting as his debut to this community, as well as his most popular videos to date. His channel originally started off making Sonic the Hedgehog Let's Plays in late 2014, something that would carry over for his content for a while. As time went on, he became less of a Let's Play channel and more of a channel that just held general reviews of retro games and Sonic discussions, with the occasional Let's Play thrown in here and there. At least up until that fateful day, on February 16th, 2018. That date will go down in infamy as being the day I turned 17. No, that's not it! The day he made his first actual rant video, the Velsky Bum 94 rant. From this point on, most of the traffic on his channel would be directed from his rant video, and as a result, Mark started making less and less Sonic videos and began focusing more on ranting about the various different personalities he's either come to dislike or just discover flaws in within their content. Making a whopping 6 rant videos over the course of 7 months. Oh. Currently, he has 3 ongoing series on his channel. His rant videos, the reading comment series, and his subscriber salvage show, in which he critiques his fans' channels. Although he is trying to reboot another series on his channel, but for now, and for obvious reasons, I will predominantly go over his rant videos. Both because it's the most popular of his content, but also because it feels like that's the general direction he's heading towards with his channel for the time being. And although there hasn't been exponential room for growth considering how he's only made 6 rant videos, over these 7 months that he's been a part of the community, he's definitely shown plenty of improvements, whether that's just from subtle improvements with Mark's avatar, his editing capabilities improving within every video, or even the way he formats his arguments, which, trust me, have improved greatly since his call to fame. He's proven himself to be a competent speaker, and whenever he sits down to discuss a topic, you typically get the sense that he holds a very strong understanding of what he's talking about. This has definitely helped him in growing his audience as fast as he has with and that's kind of what makes him extraordinary in my eyes. The fact that within such a short amount of time, he was able to gain such an impressive following, and that this following grew within the span of only making about 6 videos. But despite all this support that he's collected from both his fan base and fellow YouTubers, Mark still suffers from plenty of issues within his content, and I want to begin discussing that today by talking about how he tackles comedic timing. Granted, it is a much smaller point from the other flaws I intend to talk about, especially considering how these videos have never really suffered from having too much filler anyways, but it's still worthy to mention because when Mark swings and misses, well, it can just create a really awkward atmosphere. And note that whenever I'm talking about this segment, I'm not talking about the content of these jokes either. I typically try to avoid talking about that aspect in regards to humor, because humor enjoyment is very subjective in nature, so no argument I could make about it would even be fair in the first place. But execution and delivery are, it's a different topic, really. It's not as much of a subjective and unfair argument as it is just an argument based within fair critique. So that ground I'm perfectly capable of dwelling under, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do now. The execution and delivery can often throw the pacing of the video off beat, and I think it's fair to start off this video by addressing that issue. A lot of these cases of just hit or miss jokes just come from the awkward silence that surrounds it. I honest to God had to rewatch this one scene from his animation community video like 3 times until I finally understood what he was trying to convey, and that mostly stems from the fact that this clip was just engulfed by barren silence.
I'm just a base with faces on it. I can't even move. What the f-
There was no impact sound in anything, no background noise, no real depth to the atmosphere, aside from Mark's omnipotent voice, and as a result, it was just overall confusing for the audience because there wasn't any other sound to indicate the gag that Mark was trying to go for. This is something that's occurred multiple times throughout his videos, typically whenever he's attempting to perform skits. A lot of these skits are built around the timing and execution, but the timing feels awkward because the execution, it isn't quite right, and the execution isn't right because it doesn't utilize one of the most important senses to help illustrate what's even supposed to be going on. The thing is, a lot of this can just easily be fixed by simply adding another audio track in there that acts as background noise, or impact noise, or just anything else other than nothing. Just to look at the animation community video once again, the first 15 seconds of the video starts off in a dead silence. Nothing else until James finally speaks up. 15 seconds of uninterrupted nothingness. And a skit goes on for 30 seconds, mind you. Once again, with no other noise other than the people who are talking. Unless you count that one sound effect that played at the very end of the skit. Like, which one works conceptually? Something like this?
Heard you were making another storytime video. You got some big nuts for a person who hides behind a cartoon.
Or something more along the lines of this.
Heard you were making another storytime video. You got some big nuts for a person who hides behind a cartoon.
That was an actual 3-second fix, by the way. The thing that confuses me is that this is really the only aspect of his videos where this is an issue. His line delivery, for the most part, is pretty solid whenever he's talking about actual points. And hell, even his normal jokes outside these skits usually work in their own right. Now, I acknowledge that it isn't that big of an issue, so I don't intend to really speak up on it much else outside of this. But it's important that if you continue to make these short little gags alongside your videos, just provide something else other than the cutting words of the fucking air molecules in between lines. Making your audience uncomfortable just detracts them away from the point of your video, and that can go a long ways to really hurt your content depending on how much you do it. Thankfully, Mark isn't the type of person to do many skits in the first place, and when he does do it, it never really stretches beyond the 1 minute mark, so this isn't necessarily a persistent problem that hurts him too much. What is a persistent problem, however, and probably one of the most fatal aspects of his videos in my eyes, is an issue that relates back to the groundwork of these rant videos to begin with. You see, while I do agree with a lot of the claims Mark has made in this series, and I believe he's found a mostly functional format in which his videos can branch out and explore while also getting the point across. In a lot of these videos, Mark usually forgets one very vital asset that acts as the biggest downward spiral for his arguments, that being a thesis statement. Usually, Mark fails to properly introduce the YouTuber in question, or even his intentions with his arguments. And as a result, Mark's content doesn't only feel directionless sometimes, but can also result in a lot of the impact of his arguments being, well, kinda weightless. Mark will usually cover YouTubers that he feels doesn't need an introduction to their mass fame and recognition on the site. And that's a very understandable perspective to be coming from. But the simple fact is, these opening statements do much more than simply introduce the topic to the audience and establish the tone of the video. Yes, they do act as an introduction to the people you're about to critique, which can help strengthen the relationship between creator and audience. And yes, this can be a very easy and convenient manner to express your brief opinions on these creators beforehand. But most importantly, these thesis statements act as a way to help direct the creator towards the main themes, goals, and intentions behind their content. Sometimes this lack of an introduction can make his arguments feel meaningless because he never really established that meaning in the first place. Sometimes he doesn't really dive into the importance or significance of a creator, and as a result, his critique doesn't feel that significant because he didn't say why we should care about this critique or the content he's critiquing in the first place. This is understandable for content creators like Futuristic Hub or Super Mario Logan, who are just so obviously bad that his criticisms can either be taken as just simply pertaining to entertainment value, which is something I can appreciate as it breaks up the monotony and can make for some fun and easygoing content, but a majority of these creators he discusses are very significant and important assets to the community they represent. And look, these thesis statements don't even have to be that intricate or complex. They need to do two things: establish your intentions and establish the significance of your intentions, which is another thing I want to look into real quickly, that being establishing intent. Setting up meaning to your claims is important, but in order to develop meaning to the claim, you have to make that claim in the first place, which is why I feel that both of these things are equally important. Now, when I say claim for this particular segment, I'm less referring to the actual claims you make within the video itself and more referring to the overarching point as a whole, because that's what these introductions can also set up, the overarching idea you're trying to get at. If you're confused as to what I'm referring to, I'll explain it here. Most channels within this community will typically use their thesis statements to apply an overall goal or main theme they're trying to convey. Over the course of these videos, they'll make smaller claims that contribute to the theme they previously set forth. This overall goal, main theme, or overarching idea is something that's constantly being built up over the course of the video because these creators will incorporate examples that directly tie in with their initial statement. For example, iDubbbz doesn't say that these creators are bad in his content comp videos and end it there. He says they're bad or mentions a big issue with said content creator, and then over the course of the video will bring up various issues or faults that they've done that contribute to his claims that they're bad content creators. I'm mentioning this all because this is an aspect of Mark's content that just straight up doesn't exist due to the fact that he usually skips over these thesis statements. Because of this, he can't provide an overarching idea or a statement that helps give him a better understanding of what he should even be talking about. This results in poor direction on his half, and poor direction can affect how people intake the information you're giving them. Just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about when I mention poor direction, let us play a little game of compare and contrast with Mark's video on Storytime Animators and Turkey Tom's video on Storytime Animators. In Turkey Tom's video talking about the Storytime community, he sets up his thesis statement by explaining what the Storytime phenomenon is, going on to explain the importance of the genre, seeing as to how they basically brought animation back into the YouTube mainstream, and then makes his overarching point by making the claim that most Storytime animators don't take too well to constructive criticism, and illustrates these points over the course of the video by bringing to light instances in which essential figures of this community couldn't take criticism. He did throw in his opinions on aspects of this community which didn't have an insane amount to do with this main critique he was setting out for in the video, but the fact that he had an idea of where he was going in the video to begin with, due to him laying out this blueprint in the intro, meant that he was fully aware of how long these other opinions should have been spoken on, and as a result, these other criticisms don't feel intrusive to the video and feel just as genuine and honest as other videos that elaborate further on these critiques. In contrast, Mark's most recent Storytime video feels mostly aimless because he not only refused to set out a main idea that naturally builds up over the course of the video, he'll often focus on topics or an idea that isn't nearly as significant as the other critiques that he brings up, but it'll still make up a majority of the video anyways. I mean, for instance, Mark eats up nearly the first 8 minutes of his 13-minute long video discussing the lazy animation within this community. Whereas when it comes to a topic that would seem like a more vital argument to make, that being their personality, he doesn't even spend a minute talking about it. I'm not saying that Mark shouldn't have talked about these issues with their animation, but it shouldn't have eaten up over half of your goddamn video whenever it's not even the biggest issue you could be discussing. Granted, this issue has never gotten as bad as his most recent Storytime animated video, which is why I'm highlighting it in bold as much as I am, but it's hard to decipher what constitutes for big issues and one-time mishaps when you have such few videos to reference from to begin with. And I feel like this could easily be an issue in the future if it isn't brought to light sooner. Whether you like it or not, viewers will subconsciously highlight the topic you talked about the most as your main topic to your video. And if you're careless enough and have nothing to go off of in terms of a general idea to help buckle down on your arguments, you'll give off the impressions that these smaller issues that don't have essential arguments are the focal point of your discussion. And hey, you know what? Maybe Mark's main focus of that video was to highlight the poor animation. But if that were the case, he should have made that clear as opposed to marketing the video around general issues with the community and then spending nearly half of the video talking about a comparatively small flaw. An easy way to fix this is once again just implementing a thesis statement that relays two vital pieces of information to the audience and yourself: your intentions and the significance of your intentions. Doing this will greatly reduce these issues in the future, and I believe that it is a great step up and a great way to make sure you continue to produce quality content. Finally, the last issue I want to talk about isn't as much of an issue with his content itself, but more of the direction he's going with his content overall. If you look at Ellis Mark's channel, you may come to the realization that his content is kind of directionless. And I want to make it clear that when I say directionless, I'm not referring to his upload consistency. While his upload consistency could use some work, it's definitely an issue I relate to, and I perfectly understand it. Us content creators have a life outside the content we create, and we often have to attend to that life so that we don't end up as fucking losers. But what I'm referring to here is how Mark is constantly switching up the focal point of his channel on different series. You see, a majority of people came to his channel for the Rant videos. And I'm not suggesting that he has to stick to the Rant videos alone. If he wants to branch out to other content, he can. But what I'm saying is, before you grow bigger and continue to make your videos on YouTube, you should really dedicate yourself to building a strong foundation for which your channel thrives off of first. You need to put that extra time to set your upload schedule to match a certain genre of content that you enjoy making above all others. That way, more people will be attracted to your channel, and instead of being bombarded with an uneven distribution of series they don't care about, they're able to get what they came for, and you're satisfied as a creator. For example, if you want to dedicate yourself to, let's say, movie reviews, that's perfectly fine, but you need to put more effort into that in the sense that your channel needs to reflect that. It's no surprise that your content seems to always be widely varying in views. It's because you're constantly experimenting with other series of content that after a while your channel becomes a blended mix of all sorts of shit that just doesn't add up as well as it could. And it doesn't add up because that solid foundation wasn't set up in the first place. By this point, I want to make it as clear as I possibly can that I'm not against experimenting with content at all. I welcome experimentation within all forms of media I intake. I like to actively challenge myself in how I perceive the things I enjoy after all. It's what leads me to be as curious as to look into these videos in the first place. But the issue is how you go about experimenting with things, and that's why Mark's sub count has stagnated greatly. Instead of letting the cement dry to stack all his bricks on, he lays the bricks on the wet seeping cement, and as a result, the bricks just kind of become meshed in with the wet concrete. If you're going to experiment with new ideas, there's two rules you have to follow. One is the concept of building up structure before you branch out to add all the extra decorations. And two is the content distribution itself. You should always try to evenly manage how often you post one series and how often you post the other. The more you evenly distribute these series, the more audiences will be able to pick up on when the content they subscribe for is going to be uploaded and how consistently it's posted. And from that, they can make the crucial decision on if they should subscribe or not. By just dropping heavy loads of random weights that vary in how heavy they are onto the audience, you're just detracting more people away than bringing them in. Whenever it's so much easier just to put in a little more elbow grease and passion into what you upload and how often you upload it. Just dedicate yourself to really fleshing out the type of content you want to be making and give yourself goals to work towards within every video. Now, before we end off this lovely session between good old Marky Boy here and Professor Exro here, let's take a gander at the positive tropes that Mark beholds within his content. Something that's always just kind of personally grabbed me is how within every YouTuber he critiques, he'll often try to imitate the styles of his stills around their aesthetic. For instance, Super Mario Logan's video, Mark looks like a puppet. Or the Storytime Animator's video, Mark's character looks like a Storytime animator. You know, that sort of thing. And yeah, admittedly, it is just a small thing, but I've always found that just small shit like that can really go a long way to make you stand out. And, you know, considering how much of a shitstorm this platform is, you fucking need it, kid. You fucking need all the luck you can get with that. It just goes a long way to develop your personality and define who you are as a creator, and I think that's incredibly admirable. To follow up this lovely line of coke here that indicates good luck, Mark usually displays a good understanding for what he's talking about, and he understands the core ideas behind the video's pacing and how he tackles these arguments in the first place. The only fault in this department is, once again, his recent Storytime Animators video, which suffered quite the cruel fate due to Mark's lack of a thesis statement. One of my favorite videos he has to offer is definitely his futuristic hub video, not only because the topic is so ridiculous that it's fun to poke at without having to be too critical of the content he's critiquing, but also it's one of his few videos that actually tries to be formatted a certain way, and as a result, instead of his arguments being strung up randomly across the canvas of his videos, his arguments are far more coherent and straightforward, which when translated into English means they're easier to understand from the audience's perspective. I believe that if he deconstructed the content he goes over more often and used that time to both direct himself better and give a more solid idea of what his intentions are going into a video, his content can really see a rise in quality. And hell, for all I know, this could probably even apply to other content like his movie reviews or his fucking subscriber salvage. I don't fucking know. At the end of the day, what do I think about Mark's channel overall? Well, simply put, I would recommend Mark's content because it's entertaining and he does supply us with decent understanding of these topics he's talking about. That is, if you already know what the topic is, because, like I said earlier, doesn't establish that. That's a no-no for you, Mark. You're gonna get a spanking from Daddy Exro here. But if he doesn't try to improve these corners of faults that I've discussed, it'll leave in a lot of extra room for error, and if he doesn't try to consider where he's going with his channel will continue to grow at, it'll continue to grow at a snail's pace, if you will. I still find Mark's growth fascinating, and I will always wish him the best of luck in his endeavors. But it's also important to acknowledge these issues and to grow from them. And I have faith that Mark will do that, but either ways, this is Exro telling you all not to die until I get my precious ad revenue. Good night, children of delight, and a happy new year to you. Roulette! Oh, fuck.
This is something only you can decide.